a conversation. I mean, look, the reality is that we're reaching, brands are reaching people, but more important than that, we're empowering people to kind of be socially connected. Yeah, I mean, this past week has been really a lesson in everyone having to, first of all, the idea that we watch our newscasters from their dens or their living rooms is kind of cool. We know who they are.
There's been some interesting things happening in the background. For instance, children showing up and pets showing up, and you see what people's taste in art is in terms of what's on their walls. You get a sense of their homes, how they live. I thought it was much more intimate reactions that you get from people because they know that they're in a much more intimate setting, and it's a type of social conditioning that's brand new. Because prior to this, people who did a lot of online work were accustomed to seeing Zoom and Facebook Live. But when it came to television news, they wanted your contributors to actually show up at the studio, and you have a very, let's say, deliberate and pristine set, and everybody looks pretty much like the newscasts. But here, you see people at home. And you see people as much more human, I think, and a lot less contrived. And I just enjoy the candor that this setting brings.
Did you see the Tonight Show host with his family?
It's great. Tonight Show Home Edition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's got his kids. It's hilarious. I haven't watched enough of them. I watched the one with Manuel Lin Miranda, and he's got his kids right doing the graphics. His wife is doing the camera.
Yeah.
And he's down a slide.
Yeah, I love that.
There's been a lot of Facebook Live and Twitter feeds that have had video in the past, but it wasn't as widespread, nor as, I think, revered or considered relevant. For instance, I have a friend she's a great mother. Her name is Pearl, and I've only known her in terms of the type of artwork that she does online. But she opened up her home on Facebook, and she has these four fabulous women, and they're always doing these live things, and it's another dimension of what she's all about. And you see that with a lot of your friends. We talked about having these cocktail hours, these live cocktail hours and discussions, happy hour discussions online. But a lot of DJs are doing sets. They will just sit down and behind their ones and twos, and they'll just play for hours, and people can just pop that in, and they can do their little parties in their house, and it's a really good thing. So I think it's really positive what's happening.
Arielle, have you had any moments of inspiration from this?
I think just talking with the team on how to help clients better prepare. We have a lot of clients that are local or that really just focus on, we don't need e-commerce, we don't need online, we don't need to think about what could potentially happen or think of worst case scenarios. So I think for us, it's kind of been two parts. One part is saying, okay, how can we, work with clients now to help them mitigate the crisis and also create plans around a crisis so that, crisis communications is something that is a forefront when they're coming up with their marketing plans or communication plans at the beginning of the year. But then also kind of, discussing that e-commerce side for clients that do have local stores, or even some of our healthcare clients that are now talking about okay, we need to figure out how to do telehealth because people can't come into our doors because we're not seeing anyone face to face. So I feel like it's given us an opportunity to think a lot deeper about crisis communications, about how to handle things beforehand and during, but then also, doing a better job of finding holes in the businesses that we work with so that we can figure out, hey, like these are things you need to be doing because, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So let's get this email or this website e-commerce set up. Let's get telehealth set up. So it's kind of giving us some ideas just of how to better approach our business, but at the same time, how to better look for holes in others.
Has anyone seen any of the thank you coronavirus videos that have been circulating?
I've seen a couple of them. Like there was one that I saw that I really liked, which was like, thank you for helping us to slow down, to, realize the earth needed a break. And those things I really liked. And it kind of makes you sit back and think, even from a business perspective, thank you for helping me to realize, how dedicated my team is or whatever. But yeah, they've been great.
And even researchers who've been looking at the environment, you mentioned the environment, the fact that emissions are down, way down, and it's a way that Earth is, in fact, healing in a different direction. It kind of makes you think in terms of, man has a way of just taking as much as we need as possible without thinking in terms of what the consequences are. And I think that a lot of people thinking now, there is consequence to a high level of consumption, and it's important to think in terms of how that's impacting our families and people in general, and how important it is for you to watch out and look out for your fellow man. Even to the point where should I go outside and touch something? That no one's ever thought in terms of having to think of your personal being as something that could be potentially dangerous to someone else, and you have to think about how to protect your fellow man. And I think that's a positive. The level of awareness, the height of awareness that's come out of this.
Sean, question for you. I'm sorry.
I had a couple of thoughts. First of all, humor is helping all of us. My daughter, who is a curator of photography at the Museum of Fine Arts, she says they have a meeting every day, her friends and so forth, called Wine and Whining. And then, of course, there's the new Quarantini, which is a popular drink.
It's a Quarantini.
Times, yes. And then yesterday or this morning, there was a story about a man from Kenya, and there's an open letter saying, "Dear coronavirus, if you think you're going to affect us, forget about it. We have other things more dangerous here in Kenya than the virus." And then he says, everybody dies, and you're going to die too, Corona. So it's interesting. That's black humor. But the humor is an interesting thing that's brought us together as well.
Well, what about in Baltimore though? How your whole campaign has been about bringing the two Baltimores together, the affluent and the underserved.
Well, what is happening is there are volunteer groups that are out there. There are about 10 or 14 schools that are providing meals, 2 meals a day for children. And I was at one of them yesterday, and people are volunteering out on the streets and so forth. And then there are volunteers in some of the tougher neighborhoods trying to get people to understand, not to congregate in groups and things like that. But I rode around yesterday because I bicycle all over the city, and there's still a number of groups that don't get it. But basically, it's a ghost town in many sections of the city.
What about people falling through the cracks, who don't have access to food? And I would imagine that Baltimore's forgotten majority is severely...
It is pretty tough. And that's why these centers are really important, because the children, we have thousands of children who don't get a square meal at home. And so they are falling through the cracks.
So is there a silver lining?
And there were about a week and a half ago, we had like 7 or 8 people shot. But in the last 4 or 5 days, I think things have quieted down. And there were about a week and a half ago, we had like 7 or 8 people shot. But But in the last 4 or 5 days, I think things have quieted down. And